All right, folks. Well, happy Tuesday, and we are talking about our weather impact alert that is in place for this upcoming weekend because winter weather chances are unfortunately back in the forecast. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what we know at this stage. As you know, kind of all too well, once we are kind of only a good number of days out, I should say, we only have so many details. So we have a really good idea of kind of what we are going to see this weekend, but a lot of those fine-tuned details, specific locations, exact timing, and the exact forecasted accumulations of certain ice amounts are the things that we still need to come into focus as we go throughout the next couple of days. So like I said, I'm going to show you what we know at this stage, and we are going to go over that here for the next little bit. And we do actually have a fair amount of details right now compared to kind of what we saw the past weekend. There was a lot of things that could have changed in this last weekend. Right now, we have decent details about what's happening as we head into this upcoming weekend. So I am going to just go ahead and jump into it. I'll take this full screen so you can see what we're talking about. And we'll just kind of start off with an overview of the details. Remember, we are in a weather impact alert. That is for the potential for some wintry mix and some ice accumulation as we go throughout this entire weekend all the way into Monday morning. So this is kind of a long duration event. The actual time that things going to be falling in terms of precipitation will really just be Saturday into Sunday, but we've extended the alert into Monday morning because even though a lot of the precip will move out by the time we're head into Sunday afternoon, Monday morning temperatures will still be below freezing. So we're still kind of paying attention to that time frame as well. So what we're about to do here is I'm going to walk you through the rest of this upcoming work week and then what happens in the atmosphere as we head into the weekend. So I'm going to give you a really big overview picture of what's going to be happening here over the next couple of days. After I do that, I'm going to go into more specific details on the impacts that we're expecting to see heading into this weekend and just give you overall a little more information on that front. So we will start with the next couple of days. Now, obviously today is completely sunny, it's clear. As we head into Wednesday morning, it will still be sunny and clear, but Wednesday kind of marks the day that we're into a transition. So some change is on the way as we go into Wednesday. Heading into the afternoon, you'll notice the cloud cover is going to start to increase. We should stay dry for Wednesday, but heading into Thursday, a couple of scattered shower chances will begin to enter the picture. So Thursday and Friday, we'll have this cloud cover look. There'll be a couple of light scattered showers throughout the day. Neither day will be a major washout, and neither day is our winter weather chance, but these 2 days will look a little bit messy, and it's kind of the setup for our winter weather chance that heads into the weekend. So that's how the rest of this week is going to look. You're clear today. Wednesday you're clear, but there's a few more clouds in the picture. And then Thursday and Friday we'll deal with a couple of scattered showers. And actually Thursday and Friday will be a little bit warmer, but then we'll look at the bigger picture of our atmosphere. So I'm going to show you kind of the same timeline, but we're going to take it into the long range models so that I can show you what's going on across the entire Southeast. Because if you've heard about this event so far, you know that this is not only just for us here in Central Georgia. This is a pretty large scale event that's going to impact many locations across the entire Southeast. So like I just said, we're talking a little bit about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Not our impactful days, but the changes start to set up in the atmosphere. So on Friday, there is going to be a cold front that sits up across northern Georgia. So it sits here and it kind of stalls over that area. So it'll be sitting over North Georgia kind of Thursday into Friday. The reason that this matters at all to us is because as this cold front stalls, it's just going to gain a lot of strength in the form of Gulf moisture. So as this front sits over that area, it's just going to be fueling and fueling and fueling and fueling itself with a low pressure system that is kind of slinging in some moisture from the Gulf. So imagine this there's cold front that's sitting in northern Georgia kind of ends up being our moisture for this potential winter weather event heading into the weekend. Obviously, moisture is only one part of the equation. You need cool air to have any sort of winter weather. So after that builds up all of its moisture, then we start to see a really, really cold air mass come down from Canada. So this cold air mass all the way from Canada pulls itself down into the southeast, and the axis of this cold air sets up right along this cold front. So these two features are going to interact with each other, and that is going to bring some pretty widespread winter weather chances across most of the southeast. Now, it's important that that front sits up there in North Georgia because you can see that's kind of where the transition between true snowfall and winter precip like that and this wintry mix, that pink color, starts to divide. So we are under the wintry mix pink color, not the true snowfall color. So we're talking more about an ice event and less about what we saw this past weekend, which was nice, pure snowfall. So, okay, that's kind of the setup there. That air mass comes down and interacts with this Gulf moisture on that cold front, and then eventually that cold front does move on. So as we go into the second half of Sunday and go into Monday, all the moisture will leave us for sure. We're not really going to deal with that for too much longer. But even as the moisture leaves us, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, the temperatures on Monday morning are still going to dip below freezing. So anything that happened to fall throughout that 2-day period, Saturday and Sunday, is going to have the potential to refreeze, and then we kind of have another situation for Monday morning. So that is the setup of what we have going into this upcoming weekend. So let's talk now about what we know at this day and this stage. So obviously it's Tuesday. We're talking about an event for Saturday and Sunday. With winter weather events, the closer you can get to the actual event, the more details you're going to have. So at this time, like I mentioned at the beginning, we have several details, but we don't quite have the intricate details that we'll have in the coming days. So we know one thing for certain: a wintry mix / an ice situation is coming our way Saturday all the way into Sunday morning. So the potential for this winter weather event is pretty much becoming more and more certain for our area. We are very much likely going to be dealing with this Saturday all the way into Monday morning. So what does that mean in terms of actual impacts that we'll expect across the area? That means that we're going to have some hazardous road conditions for the weekend and then potentially into the early work week as well. And we'll talk about kind of how ice can impact power outages here in a minute, but I do anticipate that we will at least have a couple of power outages this weekend. Now, like I said, the uncertainty at this stage is specific details. So I just kind of showed you the weekend, but the timing on that is still looking a little bit fuzzy. It's definitely a pretty long-term event, Saturday probably all the way through sometime Sunday. What time on Saturday, what time on Sunday, that is still in a lot of disagreement, and the amounts and exact locations that will be seeing the strongest impacts. Those two things we also don't know at this stage. So it could be, really light amount of ice, really light amount of rainfall, something that's not totally impactful or doesn't knock our entire area out for a long time, or we could have higher ice accumulation that could end up being a little bit of a bigger deal. That specifics on accumulation amounts, we don't know that at this stage just yet. The exact locations, by that I mean who is going to see higher ice accumulation versus who is going to see less. That is the other question mark that's still on this forecast this far out. Now, as you know, because we just went through this past weekend, these details get worked out a lot better in that 1 to 2 day range. So as we head into Thursday, Friday, even early Saturday morning, that's when you're going to get the best, most accurate information. You may remember this past weekend, heading into the weekend, we were still uncertain if we were even really going to see anything. And then on Saturday, the National Weather Service ended up putting us in a winter storm warning and in a winter weather advisory. And that is when all the details came into focus. But it was pretty close to the actual thing unfolding. So the best information that I can give you right now is point number one. We are likely looking at some sort of winter weather impact that is likely more ice than anything heading into this upcoming weekend. So that's what I want you to focus on here. And now we're going to go into the models, and I'll kind of show you why some of those other details are still a little bit fuzzy. So right now we're going to take a look at the GFS model. At this stage, we only have the long range model, so we're going to look at both of those, and we're going to kind of work off the trends that the long range models are showing us. So this is time-stamped at Saturday morning. We will likely be dealing with rainfall in Saturday morning, likely starting sometime late Friday night. So we're kind of in a rainfall situation, it looks like, for the first half of Saturday. Heading into the second half of Saturday, that's when we see this rainfall start to transition over into the sleet and freezing rain mixture that we'll be dealing with through Saturday and Sunday. So once the temperatures drop on Saturday enough to kind of support this kind of mixed precip in our area, that's when we'll see this start to transition. So we do know it's going to start as rain, and then we're going to start to see it turn into something a little bit different in the second half of Saturday. We deal with that all night Saturday into the early morning hours on Sunday. Now here is kind of where things start to get fuzzy on the long range models. How long will this moisture actually stick with us? A lot of models have this moving out, or a lot of the model runs, I should say, over the last couple of days have had this moving out by the time we head into the second half of Saturday. But the GFS model, and this is actually a brand new model run from just a couple of hours ago, now has this kind of trying to linger around into sometime Monday. Now we're expecting impacts on Monday nonetheless, but this is one of those question marks that I was telling you. Timing on this still looks a little bit fuzzy. So potentially we could still have enough moisture to have something on early Monday morning. But either way, we're expecting impacts on Monday morning. Now this is new as well. We're at a Tuesday timestamp now. And like I said, in this latest model run, the GFS has tried to hang on to this moisture a whole lot longer. I will say, in my personal opinion, this scenario has not been the case for the last couple of days. So this is kind of, what I would call an anomaly out of the last couple of model runs. This is not necessarily the trend. This is kind of one outlier out of several models that we've had for the last couple of days. So this, yes, I know it shows Tuesday and I know it shows snowfall on Tuesday and not really just that wintry mix, but this has not been the trend over the last couple of model runs. So we'll kind of see if this continues to look this way. If it does, we could be talking about something that we're still dealing with in the early portion of the work week. But right now, I really wouldn't get too hung up on this specific model run. There has not been a lot of other model runs that support this same kind of thinking. So we'll consider this to be an outlier, and we will honestly just kind of move on and take that with a grain of salt for now. Let's take it over to the European model. This is the only other one that we have at this stage, and we will take it out to the same time frame. So like I said, the first half of Saturday, we will just be dealing with a couple of light showers. The European model kind of backs off how much rain we'll be dealing with. And then as we head into the second half of Saturday, that's when we're supposed to see this transition over into this wintry mix. Now, remember, the 8 p.m. timestamp on the GFS model had our entire area sitting under the wintry mix. This 8 p.m. timestamp on the European model has us in some sort of rain, maybe a couple of counties beginning to see the transition over. But again, I know it can be frustrating to hear us talk about uncertainty, but this is still one of those uncertainties. The exact timing down to the hour, down to even the time of day still looks a little bit fuzzy. So we know at some point on Saturday, we're gonna see this transition occur. What time on Saturday is that gonna be? I can't answer that question for you at this point in time, but we will figure that out as we go through the next couple of days. All right, now we're into Sunday morning. This is where the two models are kind of with each other. Heading into Sunday morning, we're still dealing with this mix, likely dealing with a couple of showers that have some sort of rain, some sort of freezing rain, some with sleet. We're kind of in this just mess into early Sunday morning. Heading into Sunday afternoon, notice the European model, we get too warm to really support any more sort of winter precip. And then by Monday, like I said, that GFS run that we just looked at is definitely the outlier. Most models have done this, pushed all of that moisture out of here before we really head into the early work week. Now, of course, there's still that refreeze concern in the early portion of the work week, but the European model does not try to hang on to the moisture all the way into Tuesday like the GFS model run does. If you're asking for my personal and professional opinion, I like this scenario better. It makes a little bit more sense to me with what's going on in different layers of the atmosphere. I don't really see a reason why we would support moisture all the way into Tuesday. Of course, like I said, a lot of things change as we go into this kind of time frame, but I am more inclined to agree at this stage with the thinking of the European model. Other thing is, European model does a really good job when we have winter weather events, so we tend to lean towards this one anyways. So this does give me a little bit more, I would say, hope and just a little more clarity about what we're dealing with heading into the upcoming work week. But like I said, that exact down to the hour timing, still uncertain. It's really a broad time frame of Saturday all the way into early Monday morning. So that is timing and kind of what we looked at there on the European and the graph models. Let's talk a little bit more about the specific precip type. Now you're going to hear us say a lot wintry mix, and you're going to hear us talk a lot about ice accumulation. So when we talk about wintry mix, what exactly are we talking about? You've likely heard this before. In fact, most people really are familiar with what wintry mix means. But when I talk about that, I'm talking about somewhere between these two categories. So we're talking about either freezing rain or sleet. So let's talk about what the difference is between those two things. What you're looking at here in red is kind of a depiction of temperatures at different layers in the atmosphere. So in Georgia, most, if not all, sort of precip that we have does actually start as snowfall, but we have really warm layers of the atmosphere. So it all comes down into the atmosphere as rainfall most of the time. When we start to get some differences in temperatures at different layers in the atmosphere, that's when we start talking about different types of precipitation. So freezing rain, it kind of starts as snow, then it falls and it melts at different layers in the atmosphere that are too warm. But if the surface is at or below freezing, once this rain comes into contact with the surface, it freezes on contact with the surface. So freezing rain is a bit of a headache because no, it's not necessarily falling as snow, but once it makes contact with the surface, it's actually freezing. And obviously that creates more of a concern about road conditions, about ice accumulation. This will really be the thing that we will likely be dealing with a lot throughout Saturday and Sunday. And this is kind of why we have the concern for ice accumulation. Now, what about sleet? It's kind of a similar story, just a little bit different. We have more layers in the atmosphere that are below freezing, so we get this kind of mixture of it starts to fall as rain and then it encounters different layers of the atmosphere that are below freezing, and it creates what we call sleet. So a little bit of a frozen mixture, and it doesn't have to come into contact with the surface to freeze, but it freezes on the way down. So we will be dealing with these two things as we go into the weekend. Our temperatures are going to be below freezing or near freezing in the morning time, and then in the afternoons we're going to see temperatures that try to get warmer than that. So there's going to be a lot of different things going on at the different layers in the atmosphere in terms of temperatures, which means we're going to get more of this mix rather than what we saw over the weekend, which was more of a pure snow. So this is obviously what causes concern for ice accumulation. You know, we're not going to accumulate nice, pretty snowflakes. We're going to accumulate sleet and we're going to accumulate freezing rain. So that's how we get an ice concern from a wintry mix, if that makes sense. They're kind of two things that go hand in hand with one another. So ice accumulation, it doesn't take much for that to be an impactful situation, which is why we have a little bit more confidence and a bit more certainty that this is something that's going to cause impacts as we head into the weekend. You don't need a lot of ice for it to be a bit of a headache and a bit of something that can cause trouble out on the roads and in terms of power outages. So we're going to take a look at some of the different measurements of ice accumulation that can cause some issues. So right now we're talking about a 1/4 inch or less. That is a really, really small amount. But even at a 1/4 inch or less, you need to avoid unnecessary travel. It doesn't mean that the roads are going to be completely iced out, but it definitely means that there's a possibility for spots on the roads that are difficult to drive through. And then you start to see light ice accumulation out on the trees. And of course, it doesn't take a lot of ice on power lines to create some power outages. So even in this kind of best case scenario, we're still talking about a little bit of accumulation on the roads, and we're still talking about a couple of power outages. Now remember, one of the uncertainties at this stage is how much ice are we actually going to accumulate. So either way, we're looking at some sort of impacts, but are we looking at the lower scale impacts or are we looking at the higher scale impacts? That's what we need to figure out here over the next couple of days. So just to paint the picture for you, not to say that this is what's going to happen, but we'll bump up the ice accumulation just a little bit more. Now we're at a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. That's when we start talking about more widespread icy roads. That's when we can have more concerns with broken tree limbs, and then the power outages become a bit more numerous and a bit more widespread. In the worst case scenario, 1/2 inch or more, that is when the roads really become on some sort of lockdown, dangerous or impassable. There's a lot of tree damage out there, and then there could be more long-term lasting impacts from ice accumulation. Like I said, I don't want this to freak anybody out at this point in time. This is not necessarily what we're forecasting, but I want to show you what just a small amount of ice can actually do so that you're familiar with what we're talking about as we head into this upcoming weekend and the things that we need to be watching for. Like I said several times, and I want to keep reiterating just because I don't want this to freak anybody out or, you know, make you think that we're going to have some sort of major ice storm. At this point in time, we are at category number 2. So like I just showed you on both of the long range models, in terms of the timing, consistency is really still far off. But we've got this second part here, a better idea of precip type. So we know that we're going to be dealing with some sort of mixed precip that could potentially cause some concern for ice accumulation later this weekend and then early into the work week. So we are very, very fairly in this 4 to 6 day out time frame, really waiting to get a better idea on model consistency so that we can get a better idea on time frame, and we're waiting to get a better idea on what or how dramatic the impact is actually going to be. Once we get to this stage, 1 to 3 days out, obviously I mean everybody knows the drill because we really just did this, but you get higher resolution models coming in, the location and the timing and then the location of those specific impacts starts to become a little bit clearer. So kind of the takeaway from this. This is going to be an ice concern. Like I said, this is not going to be a snow situation from the last weekend. We're in that 4 to 6 day range. We've got a better idea of the type of precip that we will be dealing with. It's going to be some sort of mixed precip that results in either freezing rain or sleet, and that causes an ice concern. Now there's also a concern for refreezing as we head into the upcoming work week. That's why Monday morning is included in the weather impact alert. Right now, the actual time frame that rain or frozen rain or sleet is actually going to be falling is Saturday into Sunday, but we want to keep our eye on early Monday morning in case roads or power outages, etc., still could be a problem at that time. Remember I said timing at this point in time, that is one of those model inconsistencies. So I can't tell you, Saturday at noon or Saturday at 8 p.m. We're working on timing at this point in time, and we're working on the exact accumulations and the locations with the highest impact. Those are the questions that still exist at this point in time. So with that very long-winded, pretty detailed explanation of where we're at this stage, we are live on Facebook right now, so I'm going to turn really quickly to the Facebook comments to see if there's any questions that I can address. I really do think that I have gone over most of what I know at this point in time, so if we get questions about county versus other counties, I won't really be able to answer those. And, questions about, well, how much ice are we actually going to see? Those are the two questions I can't answer for you at this stage. So I will go through here and see if we have questions, but I don't see any ones, or at least any that I didn't address. So I think that that's actually all that we have for right now. Obviously, like I said, I know it's kind of not as good because we're dealing with ice as opposed to snowfall, so this is not really a fun situation that folks want to be dealing with. But for us to be more squarely in that mixed precip type actually ends up being a good thing for us in terms of early predictions. So remember, last week at this point in time, we really couldn't tell you whether it was going to be a couple of flurries for our area or if we were going to see some widespread snowfall. Now, at this point in time, because we're trending towards that mixed precip situation and that's where we're sitting and there's not really a lot that's going to change that, we can give you a much better idea many more days out that this is the situation that we're expecting for the weekend. So try to look at the positive here. At least we're getting kind of an early runway into what we can expect for the weekend, and then just try to keep in mind the things that we'll fine tune over the next couple of days. Timing, what exact time on Saturday and Sunday is moisture going to be moving in and out, location, who is going to have the stronger impacts versus who maybe not quite as much, and accumulation, so impact. Who or what are the expected impacts actually going to be? How much ice are we expecting to accumulate? And, is this going to be a really widespread, more of a big deal situation, or are we trending on the lower side of this and this ends up being hopefully not that big of a deal for our area? So those are the things that we'll be addressing over the next couple of days. We are going to continue this live stream streak